Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about if and else if and all of these crazy ideas. So looking at our code here, I've got a very simple code. What I have is I have let name get Steve. Now this, by putting these quotation marks, either single quotes or double quotes, I got to pick one or the other. I've created what's called a string. Okay, so this is a data type known as a string. And this could be any length of word or sentence or just characters. It's what it is. So this is called a string. So now what I'm doing, oh, sorry. I wanted to erase that. All right. So now when I have my setup here, I say if name is equivalent, remember to do equivalent, I have to use a double equal sign. If I use a single equal sign, that is called an assignment operator, and that's telling it to set name to be something. Remember, a single equal sign says gets. So if I had put name gets Steve in that, the computer would get very confused because it's looking for a true-false question in our if statement. So is name equivalent to Steve? In this case, the answer is yes. So if it's true, then I do what's in between these curly braces. And in this case, I set the fill color. What if I set the fill color to? So remember, it is RGB colors. That's what we use. We use RGB colors. RG, what's the B stand for? That would be blue. So if the name is Steve, the ball will be set, the fill color will be set to blue. And then once we're done with our if, we continue on and we draw an ellipse. And now it'll be a blue ellipse because I've set the color to blue. All right, so if we look over at the diagram over here, we have our test expression. And that's if name is equivalent to Steve. If that's true, I will do the body of the if. And then I will continue with any statements below the if, which in this case are drawing an ellipse. If this statement was false, I skip the body of the ellipse and I go straight to the statement below. So if instead of this being Steve, this were Bob, then when I get to here, I would say does name equal Steve? So is the name, value stored in name, equivalent to Steve? In this case, it is not. So I'm going to skip past the body of the if, which in this case means I'm going to skip right from here. I'm going to skip right from here and I'm going to go right down to ellipse. So what color will the ellipse be? What's the default color? The default color is white. So in this case, I would get a white ellipse. Not so bad. All right. So that's if, right? Basic if. Now we can add this other piece where we can say we have an else. So in this case, same thing happens. I have a test expression, which in this case is my name equivalent to Bob? If that's true, I will continue into the body of the if, which would be this statement right here. If that statement is false, then I will go this way and I will look at the body of the else, which would be right here. So far, so good. So in this case, what I would end up with is I would say, okay, name has a value of Steve. So then I get to line 7. I say, is name Bob? Nope. Name is Steve. So then we jump past this and we go to since there's an else, we now do what's inside of our curly braces, which would be to set the fill color to red. And so now when I draw my ellipse, it would be red. Not so bad, right? So what if, again, we change it so that this doesn't say Steve, but instead says Bob. I would get to here and say is name Bob, and I would say yep. So then I would set the fill, and then I would jump after the fill. I would jump down to after this curly brace and then do this statement. So now I would get a blue ball if it was named Bob. Okay, so this is how it works. Now we're going to add one more crazy piece, and that's what if I've got 2 or 3 things. So right here, this is I've got two possibilities, right? It could be this or it could be this. What if I've got multiple possibilities I want to check? Like if it's let's say if it's Steve, I want it to be blue, and if it's Bob, I want it to be red, and if it's Sally, I want it to be green. How do I do that? So the easiest way to do that is we're going to come down and we're going to look at this one. And this is using else if. So here we can ask question after question after question. All right, but let's take a close look at this flowchart diagram for a second. So what we do is we ask our first question. If our first question is true, we do what's in the if for our first question, and then we skip on past everything. We only look at our second question if our first question is false. Okay? We only look at our third question if both of our first and second questions are false. And then we only get to the else if all three of these are false. Then we do what's in the else. Okay? So let's take a look at what I've done over here. So I've got, I've set the name to be Charlie. Set the name to be Charlie. And then I say, is name equivalent to Steve? Nope, it's Charlie. Then I say, is name equivalent to Bob? Nope, it's Charlie. And then I do what's in the else, which in this case sets the color to be what color? RGB. So now we have a green ellipse. So if the name is Charlie, I get a green ellipse, but if it's Bob, I get a red ellipse, and if it's Steve, I get a blue ellipse. Not so bad. We can even add as many choices as we want. Here we only have two possible questions, and then and an else. We could have as many questions as we want. So if I look down here at this one, whoa, there's a lot there. Let's parse this out a little. So this first line declares a variable named name and gives it a value of Sally. The second line declares a variable called expression, but doesn't initialize it. It doesn't give it its first value. Okay? So line 1 declares the variable name and initializes it to a value of Sally. Line 2 merely declares the value expression. All right, so now we ask our first question, which is name equivalent to Steve? Nope. And then we say, is name, if it's not Steve, is it Sally? That's what this asks. This says, if it's not Steve, is it Sally? In this case, the answer is yep. So now we're going to take expression and we're going to give it a value of name, which is a string, remember, plus is my favorite. All right. So then we don't have to look at any of this because we skip right on down to the statements after the whole else, if, else block. And then we're going to print the expression on the screen, which is Sally is my favorite. Not so bad, right? All right, so now let's initialize name with a different value. If I write Steve, then when I get to this first question, is name equal to Steve? The answer is yes. So then we say expression is name plus is the best. So now that is stored in expression, and then I jump all the way down and I go to the text expression, Steve is the best. All right, so now let's do one more. Let's go ahead and set the name to Charlie. All right, so now what we do is we come down and we say, is name equal to Steve? Nope. So if name's not Steve, is name equal to Sally? Nope. So name's not Steve or Sally. Is the name equal to Bob? Nope. So then we come down to here and then we say, okay, now we say I don't know plus name, which is Charlie. So then we would print the text I don't know Charlie on the screen. So There are lots of different ways we can use if, and we can use else if and else, so that we can ask nuanced questions and really get at some big ideas in our coding. And it really gives us a lot of flexibility. So play with this if and else if for a bit in your own code and see what happens.